Hey everyone, this is Marketplace Tech Bytes. It's where we round up all the big tech stories of the week and maybe some you missed. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This week we are talking about Nvidia and AMD agreeing to pay the US 15% of chip sales to China. Why the AI startup Perplexity offered $34.5 billion for Google Chrome, and what people are saying about OpenAI's new GPT-5. Here to discuss all that is our regular contributor, Anita Ramaswamy. She's a columnist at The Information. Hey, Anita.
Hey, Megan.
So we got to kick things off like we always do with our Byte of the Week. This is a number that gives us a little insight into the week in tech. Anita, what number should we know this week?
My number is $23 billion, and that's the amount of money that some analysts estimate that Nvidia would have made selling their H20 chips to China in 2025 before export controls were put in place.
All right. So, yes, we got to catch everyone up on the latest development in the U.S.-China trade war involving all of this back and forth over the H20 chips. So this week, U.S. chip makers Nvidia and AMD agreed to pay the U.S. government 15% of sales of these kind of lower rung chips, among them the H20. And earlier this year, Trump had barred the sale of these chips to China. Then he said he'd allow it after he talked with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang. But now we have this new development. So let's hear what President Donald Trump said about this earlier this week.
So I said, listen, I want 20%. So I just wanted... So when I say I want 20, I want for the country. I only care about the country. I don't care about myself. And he said, would you make it 15? So we negotiate a little deal.
Okay, so 15% is the deal they settled on. Anita, what do you make of this?
It is very much this sort of quid pro quo tit for tat policymaking. There are several experts who believe that it might be unconstitutional for President Trump to have sort of compelled these companies to pay a share of their revenue, especially when it is in the specific setting of export and export controls. And I do think the other aspect of this that's kind of interesting is that China's retaliating too. I mean, the information reported earlier this week that the Chinese regulators are sort of ordering the local tech companies to stop buying Nvidia chips because they're worried about privacy concerns. So it's not just going in one direction. This is just an escalation of this bigger conflict that's been going on between the US and China over chips.
Right. The situation with kind of the trade war and using chips as a bargaining chip has been very dynamic. There's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of kind of bargaining over these chips. The new policy, obviously there have been a lot of experts weighing in on whether or not this constitutes export tax, which, as you noted, could be unconstitutional. I mean, how likely does it seem like a challenge to this would actually materialize from these companies?
It's definitely possible, but at the same time, it seems like Nvidia and AMD's executives have agreed to play ball with President Trump, knowing that he's in office for now, and every, legal battles take years to play out. They take time. And so in the meantime, $23 billion in revenue that Nvidia could have potentially made in 2025 seems pretty large to pass up. So my sense is that the companies and the administration are going to find a way to play ball on this, but the bigger wild card is what Chinese regulators are planning on doing.
Mm. The move also seems to kind of muddy the waters in terms of what the policy objective is of these semiconductor export controls, where the target seems to be moving all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are the questions of privacy and security, but at the same time, it seemed from that clip that we saw from President Trump that this has something more to do with wanting that sort of tit for tat policy making and wanting to say, oh, we extracted this from China as a country, and US companies are the ones caught in the balance and having to appease both sides in some way.
Mhm. All right, well, now on to a slightly perplexing offer made by the AI company Perplexity. This week, it made an unsolicited $34.5 billion bid to buy the Google Chrome browser. That dollar amount is significantly larger than the total valuation of Perplexity, about double the valuation of Perplexity. What does it seem like the company is doing here?
I think it's a PR stunt. I think it's to get attention. At the end of the day, Perplexity was valued last month in a funding round at $18 billion. And we know that they've raised probably at least $1 billion from VCs and investors. And they were saying when they made this bid that they had some sort of financial backing or support secured. But the idea that that really is the case when there's such a big difference, they have, like, if I were to guess, estimate $1 billion in the bank, to spend $35 billion buying Chrome is pretty rich to me.
Not to mention, they have their own browser called Comet, which runs on, non-proprietary AI systems. They also have a number of copyright lawsuits pending against them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they've gotten in trouble for those sorts of things before. And the other aspect to this, Megan, is that I mean, Alphabet has not necessarily said they're going to sell Chrome. So we
Right.
don't even know if it's for real up for sale. There was the antitrust case that is still ongoing against Alphabet. And there's this thought that the federal judge has recommended that this as one of the remedies that Google should sell Chrome. But at the end of the day, Google can still respond to that. They are planning on doing so at some point later this year. And so we don't even really know if this is an actionable target for Perplexity in the first place, setting the money aside.
Right. And this kind of isn't the first improbable bid that Perplexity has made. They also threw their hat in the ring to buy TikTok.
Yeah, that was a pretty bold move as well, wasn't it?
Okay, well, now we wanted to go back to a development from last week, which was the release of OpenAI's highly anticipated GPT-5 model. As with any big new release, I think it takes a while out in the world to kind of build the reaction to it. So, Anita, what are you hearing in terms of, how you would characterize that reaction?
Well, expectations were really high for this one. So I would say the reaction has been pretty mixed, maybe mediocre in terms of some tasks like creative writing, even some complex math. The model, some of the early testers have said, is not as good as it was cracked up to be. But apparently, it's supposed to be really, really good at coding. It's still a leap forward. But of course, with all these huge expectations of OpenAI, I mean, the last time they had a major launch was last May with GPT 4.0. And so I
Right.
think the market and people in general were just really waiting for this to be some sort of huge leap forward. But the thing that I think about is that last May, the landscape for AI models looked really different. It's a lot more competitive now. We
Mm.
the models from Elon Musk, the Grok models, we have Anthropic's Claude models that are getting more advanced. We have some advances out of China with DeepSeek, and it's just a more crowded field. So I think it's harder to impress.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we want to kind of overstate the shortcomings of this model. It kind of makes very demonstrable improvements on a number of metrics. It just seems like, as you noted, the expectations were sky high. And I think for the entire AI industry to kind of show the market that, you can continue to make these big leaps and bounds like we saw in the earlier years of the AI boom. I think fundamentally it seems like maybe the read is this is an evolution, not a revolution.
I certainly think so. I mean, the part that was cited as being sort of innovative is the fact that this is combining a traditional large language model, which we've seen before, with a reasoning model, which is the O part of the name in GPT 4.0, for example. So that's their reasoning model. And so the reasoning models, all they really do is they just take a little bit more time to think about a problem, which is what's supposed to make them better at solving complex questions. And so this new model, GPT-5, is sort of a mishmash of that traditional LLM along with the reasoning model. And so it kind of by definition, I think, is an evolution, not a revolution.
Interestingly, a lot of the outcry over the release of this model actually didn't really have to do with anything about its capabilities or anything like that, but really the fact that it had originally in its release kind of deprecated the older models. You couldn't access them. It was kind of this one single interface that routed your questions to different models, and people were really mad about losing access to the old models. Especially I think 4.540, the kind of personality that those models had.
Yeah, people like the tech that they're used to. I mean, I think about it as similar in some ways to some of my friends who hold on to their old iPhones because they like what that specific model does, and then they get all upset because the battery life degrades
Right.
over time and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Altman seemed kind of taken aback at some of the response that they just did not anticipate that would be the issue that people, were mad about.
Yeah, and he's talked about reinstating access to some of the old
Right.
models to keep the
Yeah.
customers happy.
All right, Anita Ramaswamy at The Information. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This is APM.